Fam, let's talk about what happened last night for a second, because last night, a lot of people were up till very late trying to keep up with what was happening. They took over the third precinct, then they took over the fifth precinct, the protesters. And then it was like fireworks were coming up when the third precinct was taken over. Then we had some gunshots in Louisville. We had all of these things happening at Phoenix, in California, and Fontana. So we're going to go over all these things that were happening. I heard there were things in Ohio as well, in other states. Things have been happening. People have been getting out there. People were getting out there in the middle of the night. And it's really interesting to see how quickly all of these protests spread in a matter of minutes. We have thousands of protesters that took over the third precinct. And this was the precinct, of course, where the police officers that took down Floyd worked.
Floyd. I like the way they say rioters have taken over.
So, so they took it over, and then they there were fireworks that were shown in other videos where it was like really symbolic, and a lot of people were kind of celebrating that because it was reminiscent of the Star Spangled Banner, when we were fighting the Revolutionary War. For the longest time, a lot of Black people have felt like they've been targeted and nothing has been done. So if justice doesn't happen, at least a symbolic type of justice,
Yeah. Well, I mean, enough is enough. How much shit has to really happen? And it would just come to a point where we get out of control for law enforcement, if that's what you even want to call them nowadays. Somebody even said a good thing. They're like gang members with badges nowadays, and that's how they acted. Something has to stop. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that every single cop is a racist, but there are a lot of racist cops. And just like a restaurant or any other type of business, whatever comes out of that business, everybody is accountable for it.
Yep.
So, they have to start policing themselves. This is just like the church. We have to have serious screening processes in play to make sure that we don't have the wrong person become a cop, just like you can't have the wrong person become a priest, dealing with children, dealing with civilians. So, I mean, this is kind of it's bittersweet in some ways to see the fact that we push people towards, accountability, some form of accountability. But what I did like to see about all these protests, there was a lot of diversity. A lot of white people showed up to stand with Black Lives Matter and other groups to say, hey, you know what? We got your back. We're on your side. We want this man held accountable too.
Yeah, exactly. And then the National Guard arrived in Minneapolis amidst the violent riots. The mayor told the police that they should evacuate. In fact, he evacuated that third precinct, thankfully for the police officers. And they took over, like I said, the fifth precinct. And then the National Guard started arriving. So we have a picture, and then we have a video.
Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Oh, God. Yo. 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 They called them niggas in, bro.
Yeah, so the National Guard came in. It was pretty late when they came in. And this person said on Twitter, Minneapolis showed the world that the U.S. police aren't untouchable. If the legal system won't make police face consequences for their actions, the people will. So, again, I think the majority of people, I don't want to say on the left, but the majority of people were like, yeah, I mean, how are we going to be mad? Nothing was done. And then as a result, of course, this morning we have the arrests. So, I mean, this is what we've been saying. We've been talking about it. A lot of us have been relying on politicians to change things. for this, for Medicare for all, for anti-war, for whatever it is that we want, we need to be in the streets. I'm not calling for everybody to go looting to Target, but I am saying, like, we have to think outside of the electorate. And this just shows you that that sort of pressure will work. You just have to do it. And I want to see us do more of this in terms of the taking to the streets instead of waiting for people to change things electorally, right?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, Fiorella. You know, I mean, I know what you're saying, but I still think too there's a lot of work to be done with the people. You know, we saw this in electoral kind of ways, the way people didn't come together, they fought each other. I still think there's a lot of work to be done on the social front too as well. Glad and happy for the diversity, but I would like to see somebody really step up and bring people together and understand what the policemen really are. Not that they're just racially biased. The police are also there to enforce the laws of the elites and the rich. They are there. All the laws are set up for the elite to exploit the poor. And there's a lot of poor white people too as well. And not to say that this wasn't racially motivated, because it was. It was like a guy treating a person like an animal that he was putting down, and it was disgusting. But like I said, I am glad that we pushed for something, but I still see a lot of work to be done. I want to make sure that we can find this movement. We can find that person who's going to take a scenario like this in the name of Greg Floyd and bring us all together. So.
Well, and more than, and just like not just bring people together in the sense of like unity without solving the issue, but like bring this issue as part of all of our issues, like as part of like a general strike type of movement. That's what I'd like to continue seeing to address the economic concerns that people have, because a lot of these reactions are not just because of Floyd. They're also because people are just fed up with everything.
Yeah.
And this is just the last straw. So, oh, okay. You went away for a second. Okay. So I don't know how I feel about this because I don't trust CNN, but according to a CNN journalist, they arrested, the police in Minneapolis had arrested Omar Jimenez live on CNN, and the camera crew and his producer were also taken and being arrested. They made sure to also talk about how specifically it was Black and people of color that were arrested. You know, I don't trust CNN. I trust them to manipulate things for their agenda, but in general, we shouldn't be arresting journalists, period. That's obvious. Like, I don't care if I don't agree with them or if they're not even journalists, but we shouldn't just be arresting people who are supposed to be press. But I just don't know.
We know what it's like, right? Remember New Hampshire and stuff? You get in a certain space, you get grabbed, you get moved out of the way and stuff. You know, it's a free press out there. This is the fourth branch of government. And, you know, we're not fans of CNN in this household. That being said, you know, I don't know if I believe it. It's CNN. You know, it's kind of like, I don't remember, was it Jorge Ramos who was shunned by Trump, or was somebody in the press room? He was shunned by Trump. And they just made such a huge, big part of it. It was like ridiculous. It's like, stop like trying to say that this guy's a free press just because he was bullying Trump and Trump went back. You got real press out there like Max Blumenthal and other people getting shunned. I mean, they threatened to arrest Max Blumenthal and put charges on him again. Remember the whole Venezuelan thing? I mean, that's a real serious tragedy. Did that hit the front page of the news? No, we had to talk about it. But somebody gets arrested in CNN. Forget about it. Everybody starts screaming and yelling like Trump's the evil guy against the press. It's always his fault anyways. Yeah,
I mean, Trump hasn't been doing himself any favors, and we're going to talk about that. But he did do one good thing, sort of good thing. I mean, I don't think it's the full answer, but to continue on Minnesota, St. Paul officer, and this is what we showed yesterday, right? We showed the guy with the umbrella breaking all the windows, and then subsequently somebody confronting him saying, "Are you a cop?" And the guy ran away. So according to the people in the southern part of Minneapolis, St. Paul police officer is the one that allegedly started the South Minneapolis riots. And that's kind of what we were talking about yesterday. So this guy kind of broke it down on Twitter, and his name is Colin Kalmaker. He said a St. Paul police officer is alleged to be the culprit responsible for kickstarting the riot in South Minneapolis by methodically busting out windows at an AutoZone on East Lake Street, St. Paul, or on East Lake Street. That's what we saw yesterday. St. Paul police have acknowledged media inquiries but have yet to comment. And this person said, Gypsy Eyed Beauty said, it has been revealed that Officer Jacob Peterson of the St. Paul Police Department was the culprit responsible for kickstarting the riot in South Minneapolis. He was captured on camera and identified by his ex-wife. So
wow.
So we progressives, a lot of progressives were like, yeah, this doesn't look good. This is weird. This doesn't make sense. And we got it right. We had it right from the start that it was this guy. That this guy was the one who was starting it. And I was talking to a few of my friends yesterday who were during Occupy, who were there protesting. And they told me that the police did the same thing during Occupy, that they actually were undercover and they were the ones starting up crap to kind of divide and conquer. It's classic divide and conquer tactics where they start something, they get more violent. And that's how they get people to get distracted from what they're supposed to be doing. And I think we're going to see a lot of this. If there are protests that are going to continue to rise for whatever issue, we're going to see a lot of these infiltrators. And it's not conspiracy. This stuff happens all the time. This is how they do this. This is how they quell things. It's happened before on many occasions. So
let me tell you what it is too as well, because a lot of people, can you hear me? I'm so sorry. Yeah. A lot of people don't understand foreign policy. They don't understand the CIA. They don't understand the CIA tactics. And a lot of CIA tactics are about infiltrating groups, as nefarious characters to actually start shit to make it look like it was the protesters or whatnot causing these problems. That and therefore gives permission to the other side, the police or the authority, to then attack and strike back, because they said, look what they're doing. They're rioting. They're being crazy. They're going nuts. That's what they were trying to do. That's what they were attempting to do. And they got caught. Anyway, it's kind of cool that a lot of the people in the public, that one guy carrying the Little Caesars pizza was like, who are you? What's going on? He's just trying to talk to the guy. And eventually he's like, what are you doing? What's going on?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we understand these tactics. We read them in all the books, you know what I'm saying? We talked about on our show, fam, the way in Ukraine, these protesters, the Slovad, I believe they were called, Sloboda, whatever they are, they went from Ukraine to Hong Kong to be with the protesters, to start agitation, you know what I'm saying, to make the protests get even angrier and more violent. And therefore, the elites can then swoop in and do anything in the name of justice because they say they're stopping violence, when in actuality, they started it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what they do. And what the media also does is they don't show like people coming together. They like to completely just monetize out of the divide, right? And they haven't showed this, that after all of the looting and all of the things that were happening in South Minneapolis, people came together. So the community came together to clean up South Minneapolis, and they were all just picking up trash and fixing a lot of what the damage that happened on Thursday. And you're not going to really see that talked about in the media because it's not something that really plays to the narrative of, well, we all hate each other. And I think more than people hate each other, people just hate the lack of justice, the slowness of the justice system, the fact that politicians aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. This obviously isn't just in Minneapolis. It's been happening all over the country. So if you guys recall, the shooting of unarmed Black woman Breonna Taylor happened in Louisville, Kentucky. I mean, Kentucky in general. You have somebody like Mitch McConnell as a freaking senator. Yeah. It's not necessarily the most progressive place, to say the least. But according to the New York Times yesterday, there were 7 shots, and 7 people were shot at. Initially, the reports were that it came from police officers, and then the New York Times let out an article as well as other local media there, said that the shots actually came from inside the crowd. And this was on Thursday night as tensions there continued to escalate over the fatal shooting of the black woman by 3 white police officers in March. So this happened back in March. And so they were having a protest last night, and there was fire, there was shots, and then people didn't know where these shots were coming from. But of those reported injured, 2 were taken into surgery and 5 were in good condition. The Louisville mayor, Greg Fisher, said this Friday morning, he said no officers discharged their weapon and that the violence came from within the crowd. So the videos posted on social media appear to show the shots being fired while demonstrators surrounded the police vehicle. But according to all of these people, they did not come from the police officers. Now, I obviously have distrust of any reporting regarding anything now, because we saw how they twisted it when we were at the protest Wednesday. We saw how they twisted it entirely. So I'm not necessarily convinced until I see more evidence. But we have a couple of videos here we can show. There's this picture here of them lining up right in front of the statue in Louisville, Kentucky. And then there's a couple of videos of the firings. It's kind of hard to tell.
They were just around the vehicle, a hospital vehicle, and somebody started shooting?
Yeah, there was a law enforcement vehicle, and they were protesting right in front of the building. And then the shots were heard, 7 shots. The New York Times and the law enforcement are saying it came from the crowd. Initially, the crowd who posted the videos said the police officers were firing at them. So we're having conflicting reports as to where that came from. I think there's another video here, or it's the same. Okay, so we have there's this person that was there, and they said 6 in Jefferson and Louisville. This is a line of white people forming a barrier between black protesters and the police. This is love. This is what you do with your privilege. Okay, so they were lining up there, protecting the black protesters from the police, and it was the majority of white people. So I like seeing things like that. I like seeing people come together, work together to kind of make a point. But like I said, I'm not convinced on the firing and where they came from, but I'm just giving you guys like a report as to what they're saying it was. There's also
you never know what to believe. Like you said, after what we experienced the other night.
Yeah.
I mean, Blueberg hit that shit right up, and we even had to fight donkeys that we knew. It was like, guys, we were there. We were at that protest. We were there for 3 hours before this shit happened.
I was there for 5 hours. Yeah.
We were there for 5 hours, but 3 hours before it happened, like almost 2.5 hours. There was no violence.
They showed a few seconds of it, and they're trying to make a story out of the few seconds that they showed. There's also a video of these people earlier during the day just kind of like protesting outside of Louisville. There was a lot of people there in the middle of downtown Louisville, and they were just getting ready to protest there. I'm showing that because a lot of people like to say that the whole thing was violent up until that point, and that's not the case. And then later on, from Breaking 911, we have the protesters in a standoff.
A group of protesters has joined arms at 6 and Jefferson, where the main line is here that you can see from here. Police officers in their full riot gear here at this point, probably 200 strong, at least from where I can see. It appears that an officer is at least thinking about or preparing to fire some kind of non-lethal device. Just had somebody there you go, something has just been launched. Tear gas at some point. I'm going to toss it over to Chad Mills as we're getting some of what's been launched here into us. Throw it back to you guys right now.
Yeah. So that was all happening last night. And in Phoenix, they actually had their own sort of protests where they were pretty much out there in the middle of the night. And this person paints it as if these are violent people, but I'm sure, again, that's not necessarily the case.
Phoenix, right?
Man. And then there's just another video here. As the crowd dwindles, protesters are throwing rocks at Phoenix PD headquarters. More police are coming out with riot shields at 7th Avenue in Washington. So I think some of these just show like the anger that people are feeling. I'm not necessarily going to say it's super helpful to be throwing rocks at police, but I'm also not going to say that, you know, burning buildings is really my concern when people are obviously angry that nothing gets done. You know what I mean? Like, because there's always going to be those critics that are like, oh yeah, like this doesn't help, looting doesn't help, blah blah blah, like we need to come together, we need to be peaceful. But let's go back to Colin Kaepernick when he kneeled, when he did the peaceful protesting. Let's go back to the numerous times people have tried to peacefully protest. That didn't really get arrests, did it? Like, those type of protests didn't ignite an arrest. So far, it's showing that civil unrest is the way to actually maybe get what we need.
Yeah. You know what, Fiorella, I was just thinking about that same thing, because here it is, like we talk about, oh, peaceful protest. Well, where are we at right now? What do we have? We don't have much right now. We don't, we didn't accomplish anything at this point, especially when it comes to, law enforcement. So when you see people throwing back at law enforcement, I don't want to say I encourage that behavior, but it definitely makes you realize that something's changed right now. People are that fed up that you see like people just throwing rocks now at windows and burning down precincts. The game has changed, and the deep state and the elites or whoever's running they better get their shit together. They need a police department that's going to work for the people to protect and serve, not bully, punish, and threaten their citizens. And I think it's being made loud and clear in a lot of these states that times are changing, and you better watch out. So, I'm very curious to see what happens with what's his name, Chavez or Chavin, the police officer. What happens to him in jail? You know what I'm saying? They get, just like they had that, Minneapolis was smart enough to protect one of their own kind by keeping 100 officers outside of his door. What are they going to do when they move him to the system? Are they going to keep him in a separate jail? You know what I'm saying? Are they going to keep him away from, the yard? Because if, they get that fool in the yard, they already even like cops in prison. What they'll do is, they'll do something bad. So, hopefully some type of example is set, and, we'll see.
And last night, fam, also California, a lot of people started texting me like, how are you? Is everything okay? Because in Fontana, California, they were having their own protests, and they had a group of people gathered in the Fontana City Hall to protest the death of George Floyd and support the Black Lives Matter movement. And this was near Sierra Avenue, which is a main street in the city. And there's some pictures there of people holding signs, very similar to what we saw Wednesday night. And this is Fontana, fam. Exactly where is Fontana?
Fontana is on the way to the Inland Empire.
Uh-huh.
It's known as like a kind of southern town of sorts. They call it Fontucky. You know what I'm saying? It is like, rural as can be. So yeah, there's a lot of poor people in Fontana. I mean, there's a
Really?
few bucks. There's a few bucks here and there, but there's a lot of poor people too as well. It's in the Inland Empire on the outskirts.
So this woman put up a video saying the cops really are jumping people in Fontana for walking around. Let's take a look at what happened.
Hey, don't do it, Dave. Big Steve, don't do it, Dave.
Hands up! Get away! Disperse!
We're not with them. We're not with them.
All right, get him. Get him.
There, get back.
Go. Come on.
Disperse. Get out of here. You'll be arrested. Get back.
Let's go. Let's go, guys. Let's go.
Clear the streets, clear the sidewalks. You will be arrested.
Get in the car.
Like when I walk outside my house, I just walk out.
Get away. Disperse.
Why they go after
We're
her like
not
that?
with them. We're not with.
So it kind of reminds me of like where we were, but none of this happened. We were out there. Johnny and I stayed for a while waiting to see if they were going to start arresting people. And I don't think it got to that point. We would have heard of it. It didn't. We left right before people started leaving. But I don't know. It depends on the police officers. I mean, if they get to that point where they're gonna go after. It was intimidating seeing the police officers with riot gear, all of this protection when these people there, these kids are holding signs. I feel like to me that's another thing that people aren't okay with. The heavily armed officers. If you go to Europe, anywhere in Europe, these people have like sticks, they have batons, they don't even have like weapons.
Guns.
It just tells you a lot about our system.
Bethlehem Tessafe fam said, "Thank you guys for being on the front line." That's the super chat contribution. I just
Thank
like
you,
to say,
Bethlehem.
yeah, it's we were on the front line the other day. I just remember walking down onto the highway, and we had all our cameras and shit. I was like, "Oh shit! I can't believe this is happening. Like, we're really with these people walking onto the freeway over here." Well, we got to document it. Let's go. But thank you, Bethlehem, for that super chat contribution. It's contributions like that really keep this channel going and keep us out there hitting all the spots. Also, really quickly, if you haven't gone over to the ROKFIN, ROKFIN, there's only 2 viewers over there. That's not acceptable, ladies and gentlemen. Go on over to the ROKFIN, help us out, and if you got that unemployment check, endorse us for $9.99. Sorry, fam. Go right ahead.
No, fam. So there's just one last Twitter person from Fontana said this: there's a protest a street away from my house in Fontana. No guns, no violence, yet the police are out here shooting and throwing stuff at them. Where was this energy when whites were protesting against the lockdown in Rancho? No police was in sight then. And again, you mentioned the poverty in Fontana, whereas Rancho is anything but that. There's also, again, a economic divide in a lot of these things. That's honestly the where this comes down to. There's a lot of, like, if you have enough money, if you have enough wealth, they don't come after you. We've seen it here in Pasadena, how they come after the poor people. They're rarely ever hearing sirens where in the nice parts of Pasadena, but in the minority parts of Pasadena, you're always hearing the sirens. And so that's a whole other thing that is really, really deep in the structure of our system.